Hello, this video is one of the final videos in our quest to make an interactive sort of grid here where we are finally going to get some boxes that have the letters of our name in them. So if you haven't followed the other videos, and you probably might not know exactly where we are, but if you finished the last video, then this is where you should be, where you have an input where you can put your name, and you have a submit button. You have an input that displays the number of letters in your name. Then you have a display area here, an HTML display that has the array of the letters of your name. And we know this is an array because it has commas, so it's M, I, K, and E as separate things, as opposed to Mike, which is all one thing. And then finally, if you finished the last video, when you ran submit, when you did that, then you ended up with a one box that represented each letter of your name. And these boxes have the class square. And that's why they have this hover effect on them, because every box we made had the class square. So a quick reiteration, very briefly, all of these things here, this input, this button, this input, and then this is a div here that holds Mike, and this is a div that holds these boxes. That's all right here. These are the inputs in the button. This right here is display div that holds this right here. And then box div is what holds the boxes that we made. And then these individual divs, these rows, these are what holds the 5x5 grid. This is a row of 5 and a row of 5, and there's 5 of those. And then at the very bottom, this is where we added our script. And at the very beginning of this, we added a script that allows us to toggle. And so this right here allows us to toggle blue or the original color, or blue or the original color. That's this code here. And then in the last few days, we added a function that counts the letters. And so this right here looks for the name, the value of whatever's in here. And then it very simply just gets the length. It does name.length. And the length of whatever the value is in here is basically just how many letters there are. And then we do name.length.value, or namelength.value, equals a number of letters. And that's the value that's put in here. And so all of these things, the way these functions work is we get the information we need by adding an ID. So name input is an ID and number of letters is an ID. And these refer to this right here, name input, and this is number of letters. And then because we know what these places are, we can get the value from them, or we can put values into them, which is what this function does. But then we also added this right here, display name. And this is a function right here, but we actually trigger display name at the very end of count letters. And that way count letters works, and it puts this number up here. And then display name, what this one does is it uses the same inputs, the name input and the number of letters, but this one iterates through an array, or it actually creates an array. It iterates through the letters, and then it makes an array of the letters. And then it basically uses this for loop that we use the variable I, and I is sometimes used for index and sometimes used for integer. And essentially using this syntax, we go one letter at a time, M, I, K, and E, and we use this little push method. And what push does is that it goes through each letter, and so I is like a place mark, and so when it gets to M, which is the first one, it pushes M into letters, so it pushes it into this array. And then the next one, the for loop runs again, and then it gets to I, and it pushes the I into the array. And then the K and then the E, they all get pushed into letters. And when that happens, automatically they're comma separated. And so then that's what we end up displaying here. Display box is basically this area here. And then we change the inner HTML and we make it equal to letters, which is whatever's in this array. And that's actually why we have this. Then we finally have make a box, and that's triggered at the end of the display name. And what make a box does is it creates an element. So it creates a div like this. And then we actually add a class to it, and it was convenient to be able to add square, and that's what gives it this white sort of ability and the hover effect. And we went ahead and colored them all white, though they would naturally be white anyways. And then we use this box div.append child new box. And so basically appending the child means that in this div here, which is box div, we append or add to the new box, but this is important. We actually triggered make a box within the for loop, and the for loop runs at this amount. So it runs as long as I is less than the length of the name. So the name length is 4. I starts at 0, so that would run 4 times. It would be 0, 1, 2, and 3. So each of the 4 times that it runs, it makes a box, and it makes a box, and it makes a box, and it makes a box. And this for loop stops whenever this part here is no longer true. Once I actually equals 4, then it's no longer less than 4, so then the for loop stops and we don't make any more boxes. So that's how we ended up with where we are right now with these boxes. Now what we need to do is find a way to add the letters of our name into these boxes. So this is actually fairly simple to do. We're going to do a couple little things to rearrange, and then before we know it, we're going to have the letters of our name in these boxes. And now for this, you're going to have to follow along pretty closely because we're going to make a few changes to a few different things. So the first thing we need to do is think about what we're actually trying to do. When we make a box, we want to put the letter into the box. So we're going to make a box. When we make the M, when we put the M up here, we make a box. When we put the I up here, we make a box, and a K and an E. So if you think about that, conveniently, at the same time we are iterating through these letters, we're making a box. So that would probably be the best time to actually add the letter to the box. So we want to go up to this for loop where that occurs. And so in the for loop, we have letters.push, and then we have name I, and that's what makes this right here. That's what creates the array that ends up going right here. And then, of course, we run the function makeabox. Now, we've talked a little bit about you have to have these parentheses at the end of a function name, and we haven't really said what they do. And they are important. Normally, or very often, they don't do anything at all. They're just there. However, the purpose that they serve is actually if we need to pass information within the function, this is where we pass the information. And this is why it's really handy to be able to create the function here, because I have information in this function that I can use in this function. And so there's very few ways to get information from here, this function, which is different from this function, except for passing it along. So I have make a box, and what I'm going to put in here is, and this is going to look familiar, name, and then in my square brackets, I'm going to do I. And so I'm passing the same letter. So when I push the M into letters, like the first time this for loop runs, then I'm going to put an M, I'm going to pass the M along with the box, along with this function. And then I'm going to run it again, and I'm going to put the I up here, and I'm going to put the I in this function and pass it over here. And then I'm going to put the K up here and put the K in this function and pass it over here. And then I'm going to put the E up here, and I'm going to put the E in this function and pass it down here. So this function actually runs 4 times in a row, or it runs the number of times that you have letters in your name. That's basically how often it runs. And each time it runs, we pass along 1 letter, and that's what name, and then this means index, name index I, and it changes because this I++ adds 1 every time. So it starts at 0, then 1, 2, and 3, and so it's M-I-K-E in the case of Mike right here. So now that we have make a box name I, we need to make an adjustment down here to the function, because now we're actually passing information. And here, technically, name index I is what we're actually getting. But when we get to this function, we can really call it whatever we want. And let's just go ahead and call this letter. So basically, this function is passing along a letter. And so when it gets here, this is where this can receive this information. So make a box is triggered here, and then we run it here. And so the letter would represent whatever letter is being passed here. So given all that, we've got the letter passed. So then what do we do with this letter? Well, of course, what we're going to do is put it in the box. And how we do that is like this. First, we have to make sure that we go underneath where we have named new box. So it's always very important that we never use a variable until we've named the variable. Thankfully, it's right up here at the top. So here's new box. New box is the variable name for the element that we are creating, which is going to be a box. So anywhere down here, it doesn't really matter where, as long as it's after where we declare the variable name for new box, we're going to write this, or we're going to type this, new box, like this, dot, and then we're going to type the words text, then that's all lowercase, and then uppercase C for content. Text content, and then the equal sign, and then here we're just going to type letter. Now, something's important here. Notice how we did new box dot class name equals square, and square is in parentheses. And that's because square is a string. It's just a word that's going to be recognized, but that's all that it is. We don't put quotations rather around letter, and the reason why we don't is because letter is a variable. It changes. It's whatever the letter is being sent. That's what it is. And so that's an important distinction. And when you're coding, it's really easy to figure out what strings are because they got quotes. But it's also really easy to figure out what a variable is because they do not have quotes. So now that I have this right here, if I run this code, and I just put my name in, M-I-K-E, I can click submit, and there we go, M-I-K-N-E. Now, does that look nice? No, that does not look nice at all. So I think probably what we need to do is just add a little bit of styling, which we can do. We've already styled the background color. So let's add a couple more elements of styling, and we're going to make this look much nicer. So we're going to say new box dot style dot, let's go align items like this, and this is actually all lowercase. Align items equals, and then in quotes we're going to put center, and then we're going to say new box dot style dot justify, and then a uppercase C for content. I know this is confusing. Whoever decided these different things, I don't know why they did it like this, but that's what they did. And this one is also center. And what this does is it basically aligns things vertically and horizontally. Those are two different things. Justification is back and forth, side to side, and alignment would be up and down. And then we have the font weight. Let's go ahead and make these bold. So we'll say new box dot style dot font, and then a capital W for weight, font weight equals bold. And then let's do one more. Let's make the letters nice and big. New box dot style dot font size equals 20px. So assuming I didn't misspell anything, this should all work. So let's just go ahead and run it again and see what happens. And I'll go M-I-K-E and submit. And they're not aligned, so let me check that out and see what I did wrong. But otherwise, they are bigger, so at least I got something right here. And I think I figured out one thing that I did wrong. I didn't put style here. New box dot style dot display equals flex, and then when I run this, and I put in Mike, and there we go. And they're a little bit too small. I don't really like them that small. Let's change this to 40 pixels. And let's run it again. And do it again, and there we go. See, I've got M-I-K-E. Now I'm going to do one final thing, and that is I'm going to create a random color for each one of these boxes. But I'm going to do this in a little bit of a different way. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the back of this function here. I'm going to make sure that I'm within the bottom of the script, and I'm going to type this function. I'm going to type a new function, basically, and I'm going to call this get random color, and then just my parentheses and my little curly brackets like that. So I've got this function here. Now, crucially, I want to make a random color for each one of these. And you want to kind of think about it this way. With a couple exceptions using CSS and stuff, really anything that happens that's dynamic, that's really changing something, you have to use a function for that. So you can't necessarily just kind of like make your CSS do everything. It can do stuff, but if you want to make some dynamic change, especially a change that stays, then you have to make a function. So I just figured that I would make a function called getRandomColor. Now I could write this function if I wanted to, or I'm going to do this. I'm going to just take this. I made a function and it's correct syntax with nothing in it. So then I'm going to just copy it. And then I'm going to go over to a Microsoft Copilot. I think I opened a window somewhere. And let's see, there we go. I'm going to open this up. And so I'm going to just type this function in, nothing on there. I'm going to hold down Shift and click Enter so that I'm typing below the function instead of right beside it. And then I'm going to say, please complete this function to produce, or we'll use a correct terminology, to return a random color. That's all I need. Please complete this function to return a random color. And then let's go ahead and just click Enter. And this is going to be a very basic function, and there's probably literally like 50 different ways that this could be written. And this is actually kind of what I was expecting. So I'm going to just copy this, and I'm going to go back to my HTML, and then I'm just going to replace the empty one with the one that works. Now, this is important here. Where it says return, return is very, very important. What return means is that the information that you were looking for is this. So whatever return is, so return is color. So now what I can do is I can use this function, and I know that I'm going to get something back. I'm going to get something returned. You can do functions all the time that do stuff. I could do functions that make a random color and don't do anything, but I want to use this color. I want this color to be returned to me so I can use it. And the reason why I want to get it back is because now that I have this function, getRandomColor, then I can actually just create another style. So where I have new style, newbox.style.backgroundcolor equals white, instead of doing that, I can just make it equal getRandomColor. So let's get rid of white, including the quotes, and do getRandomColor. Because what this is going to do is this is going to create a new color with getRandomColor and return it, and then that's going to actually just become the background color of whatever box gets made. And we can check that out by running it real quick. And let's just do Mike again. And there we go, M-I-K-E. And it's a random color. It looks nice. And notice how simple that was. Now, I did use AI because it's just handy. I could have typed this out, but I would have had to think about it a little bit. And sometimes these math problems, getting this random stuff here, yeah, it's more time than I want to spend. But I know that I need a function, so I make a function, getRandomColor, throw it into AI, ask it correctly what to do, and make sure that I use the word return, so that way it returns color, and whatever color is, whenever this function runs and it gets to this line, it makes the color that's returned here the color of the box. And oddly, these were almost all the same color returned, but they were definitely random. And we're almost done with this video, but there's a few more things that I want to do, because if you're like me, you've probably been annoyed at having to click run all the time to reset this, to then go ahead and do this again and continue to keep doing all the stuff. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to actually create another button really quick that's going to allow me to clear these fields and then start again. Basically, it's going to be like a reset button. So it's going to clear all of this stuff. And that's actually not that hard to do. Let's just go all the way to the very, very top where our inputs are. And so I've got Mike, submit, and then 4. This 4 is pretty wide. I don't think I even put well, it's 53 is how much width this is. It doesn't really need to be that much. Let's just try, I don't know, 23? Let's see how 23 looks. And if I do Mike, good. And I don't even really actually need to see this, do I? Well, I'll leave it like it is just because I may as well. So let's just make this 30. That way the entire 4 will be visible. So we'll go, there we go. So the entire number is visible unless you have like double digits. So I made this a little bit smaller. And then for Mike, I can make that a little bit smaller as well. So let's see, that's this one right here. And I'm just going to go style equals. And then in my quotes, I'm going to say width. And it looks like it's about 170 pixels. So let's just make it 100 pixels right now and see how that works. So that's good. And somebody's name might overflow this. Well, Anderson fits. So maybe a few, well, misspelled Anderson fits, Anderson. Yeah. So maybe some people's names won't really work, but that's all right. I can live with that. So now let's make a button that would go right here. So right after this input, I'm actually just going to copy this button here. May as well do that instead of typing. And then after this input, which ends here after disabled, I'll make a little space, add this button, and then here I'm going to just get rid of submit and put a capital X. And I'm going to change this function name to reset. I may as well just make it reset. And let's make this button red. So we'll just go style equals like that. And just say background dash color equals, red, like that. So that should make me a red button. It's a red button. I don't like the border, but I'll live with the border right now. We can always fix that later on. And after that, I just need to make a function called reset. So let's go all the way back down to the bottom. We may as well go to the bottom. And let's go here. And we'll say function reset. And then we'll do our parentheses and our curly brackets like that. There we go. And now I just need to reset. And reset is basically just clearing all of these things. So to make it simple for myself, I'm going to go and get the ID names of everything I need to reset. So I want to reset this one right here, the name input. Let me just, actually I'll copy the quotes too because I know I need them. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to copy the ID for the number of letters. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to copy the ID for display because I know I need that. That's where the array goes. And I'm going to copy the ID for div because I want to clear this field, and then I also want to clear this and this right here. So I've got all of those IDs done. So let's go back down to my function, and then here I'm just going to type this. I'm going to say document.getElement by ID, and let's see, the first one was, let's see here, come on. Well, that's not working as good as I wanted it to. So we'll just do it individually. So box div, like that, and then I'm going to do, well, let's leave it like this. So we got this right here, and we don't need to name this as a variable. We just need to figure out where it is. And let's make 4 of these because there's 4 things that I'm doing. Let's see if I can remember what these were. So I have box div, I have display, I have name input, and I think the other one is number of letters, but let me just make sure. Yeah, it's number of letters. So copy that real quick, come back down here, and you may be wondering, like, why is this guy going out of order? And the reason why is because it doesn't matter what order I go in. As long as I have all of these elements named, then I can just change their value. So that's why I don't need to declare the variable names at all. I'm just saying get name input, and name input is an input. So this one we have to say dot value equals, and then I'll just do 2 quotes, and 2 quotes means nothing. It means blank, empty. That's what 2 quotes means. So that's going to be, this right here is going to be zeroed out or emptied out. Then I have box div. Box div is this div right here. Now this is not an input, that's just an HTML. So on this one I have to say dot inner, which is all lowercase, and then HTML, which is all uppercase, equals, and then I've got my quotes. And then just for time, I'll just copy this right here. And display is what Mike goes in right here. That's also an inner HTML, which needs a dot. And then the last one is the number of letters, and that of course is a value. So dot value there. So now I have all of these. When I click reset, these all should clear every time. So let's run this, and let's go grab my name, click submit. There we go. If I click this, they reset. I can do another name, Barkus. There we go. And boom. So now I can do it as many times as I want to do it. And let's do one final thing, and then we'll be all done. I'm going to hide these boxes. I don't want them here, but I don't want to get rid of the code. And there's a special class that we can give to everything that will make these things hidden. So these are all square, which is good, but if I hide everything that's square, then I'm going to end up hiding these, because these are also given the class name square. So I don't want to hide just square. But these are all in a class called row. This is not in a class called row, but this is, I believe, well, this is in a class called row. So let's just do this. We'll do it the old-fashioned way. We're going to make another div. And this div is going to start at the top of this row, and it's going to end at the bottom. And it's going to be a very, very simple div. So right here at the, right between box div and row, I'm just going to type the start of a div class equals, and then in quotes, I'm going to type d-none, which really stands for display none. So now all I need to do is close this div out way down here at the bottom, and that would be right about here. And let's just close this div out. So now the entire area here, from here all the way to the tippy top up here, is all wrapped around in a div where the class is display none. And everything works top to bottom and then also kind of outside to in. So all of this should disappear when I click run. Let's just see. And it doesn't. So let me investigate and figure this out. And honestly, instead of trying to figure out where I went wrong here, I have a better idea. Let's just make this class, and we'll call it container. So we're basically declaring another class, and then let's just apply some CSS up here anywhere in my styles area, as long as I'm not within another CSS element. And I'll say dot container, and then we'll do my little curly brackets. And here, for this style, I'll say display and none. And actually, before I do that, let me reset my display so we can see them. And here I will say display colon none. And now everything within container should have no display. So if I hit run, I get this. And I just did this because that way I can be left with just my stuff here. So this, if you get it like this, then you were successful today. And you can go ahead and make sure you put this onto the Padlet, and that's great. But don't forget to do the second part of today's work, because it's very important that we do a little bit of array work and we change some arrays so that we can make some other neat things happen. But if you got this done, that's fantastic. You've got a great skill set that you've already coded for that you can use later on in this class and doing other things that you'll probably find useful for. So thanks so much for watching.